Oh, there we go. All right. Deciphering My Experience, also known as Eric. Welcome to Radiant Creators. What we do here is in general, we interview inspiring people to inspire others, and you're inspiring. So, saw you on Rex Bear, and that was a lot of fun. And thought, I also look at your YouTube channel, and you're coming from a lot of different angles, doing a lot of stuff. And so I just thought, well, Eric is interesting, so let's just hook up, do some chatting, and see what comes of that. Well, so where did it all start? You have a channel now, of course, Deciphering My Experience,
Mhm.
and you really are kind of a variety show of topics and such. So I just wanted to figure out, who this guy is, and because all of
That's
it's pretty cool. Like I said, saw you on Rex Bear, and that was like the typical Rex Bear interview, just kind of just like this explosion of stuff.
yep.
So how are you doing, and what led to the creation of Deciphering My Experience?
I guess if you want to put it that way, Craig, we could start there. It's we're actually getting close to 1 year. I've only been discussing things openly for getting close to a year now. I think I started last February, and I just like you noticed, I was on Rex's show. I was discussing that I had been to the South Pole Station. I'd been there for a year. That's a chapter in my book, so to say, that it's an experience that I have. But in my channel, I cover a lot of other things as well, because my experience, I learned, is very out of the ordinary. I use the term abnormal. I've had an abnormal life. A lot of people don't like that term, but it fits me just fine and dandy, because it's not the same as everyone else's on many levels. How many people have been to the South Pole Station? Not a lot. How many people have wintered at the South Pole Station? Not a lot. How many people have been up working in the remote regions of the Arctic and fly in and fly out locations at science facilities, gold mines, all kinds of weird places that I've been, um, as a as a plumber on Long Island. I work for what I would debate are some of the richest people on the planet, and nobody knows these people's names, and they think of folks like Bill Gates as loaded and folks like Elon Musk as well-heeled, when that's very funny. Really wealthy people, you'll never hear of their names, but I used to do their plumbing. And they would have, magazines on the counter next to the toilet that said, like Trilateral Commission Quarterly and Council on Foreign Relations Annual. So I mean, I've crossed weird paths. And as I was doing it myself in my firsthand experience in real time, I would just be like, huh, that's weird. Huh, that's weird again. But it just it just started to get to a point where I started looking at all these other stories. I mean, I consider myself kind of a researcher. I read a lot of books. I've always looked into things, and my mind has always been of the position that we're being lied to, that we're being misinformed, and there's definitely something else going on. And the more and more I grew up and started to connect my own experiences and observe the experiences of others, I kind of just had to throw my hat in the ring and go, that's it. I've had enough. There's there's too many lies going on here, and the compartmentalization of information is a savagely strong tool that I witnessed in my life being very functional, because I got to, in my life, go to many different compartments and communicate with people. It's just that simple. And I suggest people do that regularly in their lives and stop thinking of yourself as so awesome because you're a specialist in your field. If you can't integrate your field amongst all of the other fields, you're making your specialty obsolete. So we have to communicate with each other and find out the things that we've been withholding, and make these conversations happen. So that's basically where I threw my hat in the ring a year ago. Was like, listen, I don't have all of the answers right now. I see everyone that's like, oh, I've had a crazy life and I'm going to write a book and tell everybody what it's all about. That means they have to first figure themselves out. They have to have all of the answers to who they are. And I'm not going to pretend to be that man. I don't have all of the answers. I have a lot of great questions and have a lot of great experiences that I just simply want to share because they have value. And when people take my experiences and add them to the equation of other things that they also have to consider, I think it's going to cause some people's paradigms to shift. So I'm just simply trying to get my experiences out there in the mix with everybody else's for consideration. I'm certainly going through the motions of getting myself figured out as well. So my questions change, my positions change. I'm an open-minded human being that will learn new things, and I will change my mind. That happens.
I like that. And so when you first created Deciphering My Experience, the YouTube channel,
Mhm.
um, you have a little video that kind of goes over, hey, here's the idea of what I'm going to, do what this is about. And what I have found is, when you start, you have one vision, but then of course it tends to evolve, it expands, or maybe it changes directions completely a few times. So how has that path been? Have you kind of been on a straight azimuth since then? Like how has what the channel is expanded or changed or done 180s or 90 degrees? Where are you now in comparison to where you started?
I think on the exact same mission, primarily, with only side missions added on. That's all. Is that in the process of trying to figure out what I intended to do, I'm continuing down that path to decipher my experiences, figure myself out, and share that. But in the meantime, I am now very happy to work with other folks as they are working on their experiences as well. And that's just part of the course. Once I have knowledge and an ability or a skill to help someone, I'm hard pressed to withhold that. So people contact me by email pretty regularly with similar stories. I do believe a lot of people were impacted in their childhoods negatively in a similar way that I was. That it happens. So other people come at me with their stories and want to share, and I guess just get confirmations or certain details clarified to help them out. And I actually enjoy that a lot because I think part of what I'm doing in the Decipher of My Experience is to bring to light that there's a massive problem with how our children are treated in society. And, a lot of people don't like to discuss that, but it's a darker aspect of reality. We should treat kids better.
Yeah, when I got into Rudolf Steiner's work, I realized I learned about the Waldorf schools, where you might be familiar with him, but if not, he was just this guy. He lived around like like 1870 to like 1920 or something like that. He was quite the philosopher. He was kind of seeing between through dimensions, through evolution of Earths and such. He was quite the interesting character, and he created the Waldorf schools, which is basically one of the things they did there was until a kid was over 7, you would never. He felt that actually to inflict numbers like certain amounts of logic, etc., was actually very damaging to their psyche. He was like, no, they should just be in nature at that point. And it was this whole like amazing curriculum. But when I learned about that, I was upset. Having gone to regular public school, and I went to very, very dumpy, crappy public schools, which is another one. Like so many people who did go to public school, they go, well, wasn't it great? And I was like, I don't want to break this to you, and I know you're not going to accept this, but for some people, public school is hell. you know
Oh, I believe it.
yeah, not all of them are great.
Mhm,
Some have teachers that care, they have good communities, etc.
mhm.
Some do not. Some teachers are just like, well, as long as none of the kids die on me, then I won't get fired. I mean, so yeah, when we send kids off to that zoo where anything can happen, oh,
Mhm.
it's very scary. So that's been a big one for me too. I mean, of course,
Yeah, and
parents
that's
aren't. Yeah,
and you're discussing the angles, so to say, of what would be presented as the pros, like the good side, like the theoretical good side of going to school as you get an education. But some of the stuff that I'm bringing to light on my channel, we have the CIA and the remote viewing programs of old. The Stargate program. I don't know if you've heard of these, but these are well documented now. I'm putting together a website with all of the documents, all the presentations to let folks know this occurred. They were testing on children in grammar schools in these programs without the knowledge of their parents. This happened.
yeah. I look forward to that getting all put together because um, it's a website that is definitely needed because everybody hears of these things and they have various levels of knowledge about it. But what people really need is just give me the documentation, let me see a good paper trail, some proof,
Yep.
etc. Which it is out there. You know, kind of like the X-Files says, you know, the truth is out there. Yes, but is that documentation there for people to see? And I
It
have to
is.
throw in easily. You know what I
Yes,
mean? Is it? And so
absolutely.
what you're
Without
doing is
pause.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. People, I've made a video to show people the workflow to just get onto the CIA's website to use the Freedom of Information cell to access information. You can just go right to the website, type in Stargate, they'll give you the documents. You can get
I
it right
love it.
from them. And
It's
that's
amazing.
basically what I do is I mine their archives for people. I know that other people don't want to go through 20,000 documents, right? I get that. And they also aren't necessarily knowing what to look for because the keywords and things like that. Just because the documents are there doesn't mean that the CIA was making it easy for you to search it. They're there. It is not a very searchable format, technically. They don't make it easy at all. They move things around regularly. They retitle stuff, and misspellings and keywords matter. I mean, seriously, they might have something only referenceable by the right keyword in the right misspelled way. So you really have to take time mining it. And what I'm doing is pulling out all the pertinent info. I'm having a website be built so that folks can jump right onto the website and, like walking through a library, they can just peruse the document. They don't have to download anything. So they don't have to be afraid of who I am. You know, they don't have to worry about what's getting in their computer. They can just simply go to the site and look, and just like walking into a library, no obligation. It's just take a peek.
I love it. That is an incredibly valuable service
Mhm.
that you are doing for everybody. You know, it's great when we can be the pioneer who has the passion and the drive, and you know, for something that they can, you know, share with the greater community like that. Because yeah, everyone is definitely not going to do that. But if it was easy, oh, go to this site, here it is. Well, then they would go check it out. And there's a lot of people who are plenty awake at this point. They just need that little bit of an edge to gain that knowledge, to have that certainty.
I
You know.
totally get that. Yep. I just want to make everything readily shareable for folks so that we can start really rolling this information out to the public.
Yeah. Well, so you found yourself as a plumber working for very wealthy people, you know, and so I'd have to ask, like, do the ultra wealthy, do they use like a do they like bidets, or are they
Oh yeah,
just
tons of
really
bidets. Yep,
really
bidets
tons of
all over the
bidets?
place. Absolutely, for real. Yes, there's a level of wealth that you get to, and there will be bidets present for sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Well, you mentioned that you saw magazines in there, and that's one that something that really was a big one for me. So you were in the military when you were younger, and I was too.
Mhm.
And um, one one of the things about being in the military is when you're in, and so, you know, just in case anybody's wondering, I don't endorse it. If anyone's thinking about joining the military, don't. And if your kids are, don't. That's just my
I'm in the
opinion.
same
Okay.
position
Yeah,
at this
just don't.
stage of the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Don't
not
do
drinking the
that.
Kool-Aid twice.
Yeah, yeah, which is very hard because, as you know, since you were in the military,
Mhm.
oftentimes people who, you know, like their kids are getting in the military or something like that, and they're like, "Hey, can you give them a good word?" And I'm like, "No, I'm sorry, I really can't."
I tell them about that the great line from Forrest Gump: "Run, Forrest."
Yeah, run. Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
don't
Like,
do it. Yeah,
mm.
tell me all the cool things the recruiter told your kid.
Oh yeah, really. Oh yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that I think really is very harsh, is that
Mhm.
many youngsters, especially men, because you know I'm male technically, you know, so I kind of can relate to those that the male mentalities, the male psyche a little better. Um, I know for men, for young men, they're looking to become a warrior. They're looking for like Obi-Wan Kenobi to guide them, you know, and ultimately then they get in the military and they realize rather quickly that, sorry, you looked in the wrong place. And then that becomes this real crestfallen moment. And that's
Mhm.
a real hardship, but that's a different story, I guess. But one of the things that I came across is when you're in the military, nobody knows that, how do I put it? You can get places and see things and wander around on bases that it's just kind of open, you know, and some of the things you can come across are quite remarkable, you know. uh,
The whole world is like that
yeah, the
technically.
whole world's like that, you know. And I guess I really technically can't say some of the strange things that I came across. I'll keep that to myself. I won't share that part with the world. But um, one things that I found, not in bathrooms actually, but also like you're saying, magazines, which I found in some offices I found around, things
Yeah.
that you never knew existed. Like I didn't, you think the CFR monthly or whatever, like you
Mhm.
mentioned. Like I saw one about, gosh, it was one, I forget what it was called, but it was about sustainable warfare and stuff like this.
Yeah, these
And
reports that would float around, and yeah, you next thing you
yes,
know, you're in an office building that was condemned, by the way, and you're with a crew that's doing a field day.
exactly. And you come across this stuff, and so
You
that's the
come
thing.
across
Has
everything. Yes.
yes,
Yeah,
and
you're
so
like,
you're
wait a
like,
minute, the building's condemned, but there's like twice as many classified documents as pornos in here.
exactly, exactly. Then you get into the classified porn, but well, anyway. So yeah, I mean, um, but yeah, and I saw things, and I just thought, what? Here's a report on sustainable warfare and how much it would cost to have so many, or can we have this many conflicts like this and this and that, and you're thinking like, you mean you're making a budget, and it was very strange. If I go, wait a second, isn't war like war isn't something that you figure how many you can afford? Uh, it should be like, oh crap, somebody's attacking us. Well, this is war. No, I
Mhm.
realized that, oh wow. So I was a youngster and I realized, man, this is something that they're like, well, how much budget do we have? And then like how exciting and luxurious and exotic can we make these like travel plans for generals to go and blow the crap out of places. And I went, wow, here I am in the military, and I realized that this is just a game
Mhm.
for wealthy people. This is not what I thought it was. So
When
yeah.
I enlisted into the submarines, we as a nation were not officially at war. And I got into the submarine service, and pretty much everyone was like just laughing at me for not understanding that submarines are always at war. That's just, I mean, it's inherent in the purpose of their existence. When submarines go underwater, they're at war. Maybe the rest of the world isn't aware of it or privy to witnessing it, but that's kind of the whole purpose.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah. I always admired the submariners because I've never been on like an active duty submarine, but I have been to some that are, moored, basically, I guess, dry docked. I think it's in, what is it? Is it in Baltimore? I think it is, whatever. There's two submarines, and they also have an old wooden ship, which is pretty amazing too, the Constellation. And then next to it, there's an old Russian sub, World War II era. And then there's a slightly newer, I think, 80s era, United States, U.S. submarine. And I went in that Russian submarine, and I went, you mean people went under the water in this piece of crap? I'm like, I'm terrified, and I know it can't sink, but I'm not sure. I'm like, I just thought if I
yeah,
was in
you'd
this
probably flip
thing,
out if they just closed the door right there and it was above water still. You'd be like, let me out.
let me out. I'd be like, let me find a blowtorch. I'll cut my way at the top of this thing, and it
Yep,
won't
yep.
take much effort. I'm like, and you realize, wow, they were just sitting there with an exposed nuclear reactor, and they.
And you're very mechanically minded, so you can
Yes.
appreciate the idea of that thing breaking underwater and just being like, well, now we really need to figure this out.
Yeah, it's I guess the only
You don't get to
consolation
call
you've
AAA.
no, yeah, and the only consolation you've got is that I guess if it does technically implode, you won't feel it.
Correct.
That's what the only good thing about a submarine.
Mhm.
You won't be wounded. You know
Rapid reintroduction to reincarnation.
exactly. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, those things are horrifying. I can't quite imagine. So since you're just talking about all the random stuff that comes up, it's fun. Like, what was it like that first time being in a submarine when that thing goes underwater? To me, it just seems absolutely terrifying.
There's almost nothing that I am able to discuss about my submarine service, technically, according to my debrief. I can state that I was assigned to a training command. I could state that a submarine can dive in excess of 400 feet. I could state that the Los Angeles class submarines were nuclear capable as far as armament goes. There's not too many things on the list I recall that I was allowed to discuss,
No, that makes
technically.
sense. And
Insofar as what would be considered, it's weird, what would be considered my submarine service, like my activities for the Navy for submarines, versus activities for myself and my person in my exchange with being in a relationship with the Navy, if you can follow what I'm saying. Like, so I can discuss, like, I was in the Navy and I can discuss things that happened not on a submarine, like in an office building or on the
No, it
lake.
makes sense. It makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. Well, I would just imagine, at least for myself, having been on submarines that were decommissioned,
Mhm.
the idea of being in that thing and it even floating is horrifying. And then going underwater, I'm like, yeah, and being mechanically inclined, especially the Russian sub, I'm like, this thing, I'm like, I admire how they got that much plumbing and hydraulics, and I mean, it's amazing how they got so much in one tube. It is extraordinary. But
And in a museum boat, you have to actually really appreciate that that boat's actually gutted so people can tour it.
oh,
Yeah, they're because everything's modular. So technically, the those boats, they basically get like gutted, like all the stuff can come out that can come out, and then they'll place back in some modules and things so that there's stuff for people to look at.
oh, wow, that's really far
So they give
out.
you room to breathe and stuff. I actually this you'll get a kick out of this. So you were in the military, so you understand protocols and the rules and regulations, right? So I had one time my parents visit the submarine base that I was stationed to. They came up for the weekend out of nowhere. I didn't know, like, they call me, oh, we're gonna come up and visit. Oh, okay. Now what do I do with them, right? So we're walking around base, and I just figured, let me see what happens. I went. They have a separate lower base for where the piers are for the boats, the subs, and I just went straight to the lower gate guard and I flashed him my ID and I said, I was told I might be able to get my parents a tour of one of the boats. And he just looks at my ID and he like grabs the phone and he calls some folks and he tells me that they're gonna send an escort over. So they send an escort over and they bring me and my parents over to I'm not gonna name the boat, but they bring them over to a known boat. Was featured in one of the movies. It's pretty cool. But they make the announcement that there's going to be guests and a female coming on board. And we go down the hatch, and very rapidly we get into the control room this is a fully commissioned naval vessel. I know the protocols. I was blown away at nothing covered. And my parents were getting a tour in the control room. And I'm like, I couldn't breathe. I was like, that's what they're supposed to cover. That they're supposed to cover that. What's going on? I'm like, and my parents had zero questions, and this blows my mind because it goes to show like how much you can really put stuff right under people's noses, and nothing, not a peep. We did the tour, we walked out, and no one ever said anything to me about what they saw in there. And I would just say that for the year that we were in that room, their minds should have been blown.
Wow, that's really something. Yeah, that's the fun thing about. Well, I'll call it a fun thing about the military is that that military ID that you've got. You'd be surprised where it will get you. Sometimes, like where you can just walk in, and like for me being a kind of a curious, youngster when I was in the military, yeah, I would just try to walk in on all kinds of places. Like, hey, got my ID, and just walk in and look around and. Yeah, what you might find in some of those rooms, like, hey, this isn't locked. I think I'll look in there. You're like, what
Oh my God. This
if
is
I
so
could,
funny to me because
yeah.
I cannot even begin. So I did a lot of stuff on Long Island, and I'm very much a curious person. And I oftentimes my job will bring me right into places that are really cool, and I get to ask questions and learn a lot of cool stuff. Lots of times I'm just near a cool place. Like I got scheduled to be next door to something that's really cool, but technically it's not trespassing if you ask. I can't begin to tell you how many times I just walk right up to a place with a wrench and a flashlight and be like, where's your shutoff valves? They walk you right through the whole building. You get a quick tour of anything you want, basically.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, really. If you want to get away with something, just wear a yellow vest and have a little hard hat and just
Oh yeah.
carry something and just look like you know
So
where you're
easy.
going.
Yeah, walk with determination.
Yeah, I just I'm going over there to look at something that's got to be fixed. Yeah.
Where are your shutoff valves? I have to find the right shutoff valve. Where's your shutoff valves? And the people just start opening doors for you.
Exactly. Oh, it's so fun.
And it doesn't even have to be their building. You could say it's for the building next door. We think it's a cross connect. You can come up with anything under the sun. That's not the right. Something's the matter. We need to get in your place and take a look around. Aye.
Exactly. Well, something I think of when it comes to the military, because you got out of the military, and it seemed a little bit controversial, a little bit of a challenge to get out. I understand that, I understand, like, because when I got in, I was kind of in boot camp and I thought, yeah, this is pretty goofy. I ended up just doing my couple of years and I was out. But I always thought to myself, what's this big deal about not letting people out? I never understood that, because to me, it's like, I think that the military would be a better military in like a matter of hours. If you didn't want to be there, you could quit. And if they didn't like you, they could just fire you, and since you were like a Navy, like a Master Chief, right? Master Chief signs off on it, you're out. You know what I mean? I've never understood this, like, no, you signed up, you've got to stay. What kind of like, no business on earth does that. Like, hey, if you don't want to, like Dale Carnegie wrote, and how to win friends and influence people. Now, I mean, he's a controversial character. I know that book is controversial. I'm not saying Dale Carnegie was a great guy, but he was correct in that if you just have one person in your organization that doesn't want to be there, it will poison the entire thing. So either let them go or get rid of them. And so I always thought, if someone doesn't want to be there anymore, why can't they just quit? And if they are nothing but a pain in the ass, why is it so hard just to get rid of them? Like, for me, as I moved up in the ranks and having to be in charge of people, like, it was like, no wonder I wanted to get out. I mean, I wanted to get out anyway, but I was thinking, like, I have to be in charge of people who don't want to be here, and I don't want to be here. You know what I mean? Like, why would you want me to stay?
How do I get my unmotivated ass to motivate these asses?
Yeah, it's just like,
oh man, it sounds like an episode of Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, it's like, if people
not Hogan's Heroes. What was that other one? The McHale's Navy.
Yeah,
McHale's Navy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just that they were motivated compared to the regular military, though.
Yeah, they were motivated in the wrong direction. That was what I actually saw a lot of too. There was a lot of shenanigans in the service that was fun. We had a racket in boot camp. There was whew, it was unbelievable what you could get through the mail in boot camp.
Oh,
we got in
wow.
trouble. Yeah, I was on divisional staff, and we had male petty officers that were just like, there's all kinds of ways to get stuff, and like lots of times, I mean, seriously, like, it was harmless. Like, it was, and when I was in boot camp, you weren't supposed to smoke. So it was like smuggling cigarettes in, stuff like that. You weren't supposed to have them, but we could get them. And then also, like, there's like limitations on how much food an individual or a company could receive, like, from families, so to say, like, from, because some dudes, like moms, would be baking like 5-gallon buckets worth of food, wrapping tape around it and shipping it every day to them. Yeah, seriously, like, off the wall stuff. There was no lack of sweets and cookies and cakes being baked by the 180 families of all the recruits in my company. It was off the wall, the amount of food being sent to us. So they would try to limit it, and we would try to, like, regain it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, crazy experiences or extreme experiences are always, like, they're great teachers. They're, because you see just an aspect of existence that most people don't. And so you spend some time up in the Antarctica, and and where's that?
I did down in Antarctica and up in the Arctic. I'm a bipolar plumber.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow. Well, I guess one thing I'd ask is, what did the cold teach you? Now, I heard you talk about, many things with Rex, but something that people are coming to realize right now is that the cold can teach us quite a lot, because if you've heard of Wim Hof, like the Wim Hof breathing method, and also like the cold immersion and the cold showers, we're finding that he is not the first one to, study it from this perspective, but the idea that we're over domesticated, that basically, like, You know, if you look at a wild turkey, if you've ever plucked a wild turkey or if you happen to see one, you're like, this thing is a stout, noble vehicle. But then you look at like a butterball and you're like, oh man, you know, and which one do you look more like? Oh crap. Well, you can begin to look like the wild one and you can begin to eat like the wild one and move like the wild one. So you can regain a lot of strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, Wim Hof has really brought that forth through the breathing and the cold immersion that, wow, you can actually undomesticate yourself and be happier, healthier, and wiser and more spiritually connected. You know, you can gain so much strength. And so that's something I just wondered was like, what kind of a teacher was the cold? Because you went and experienced the real cold for a while. And do you feel that like connected to something primal in you? Did you grow from that experience?
I did. This is a great question, actually, and I'm trying to figure out the right words for it because the the cold was one of the greatest teachers in my life. That I spent a year at the South Pole straight. Including the winter time. I mean, it's really hard to impress upon people what that was like in regards to cold. I think Wim Hof would look at me and be like, "Wow, you're a freak. You go out in the cold." um, but I respect I mean, I stand behind everything that he is doing. When I came back from the South Pole, I was professing to people that they need to take every gym and turn it into a sub-freezing zero temperature. You should go work out. It should be ragingly cold. It should be painfully cold, and you should break your ass to keep warm. And then that's your routine. And then get out, and you'll be better off for it. I would say that the cold was the cold was one aspect of Mother Nature at the South Pole that was your enemy. So my teacher was my nemesis. The cold was my enemy at the South Pole, and Mother Nature as well. She was not a nice person there. Everything at the South Pole, Mother Nature decided should be dead before I got there. She didn't want anything to be there before I got there. And the entire time I was there and everybody else was there, she was actively trying to kill us. That's technically the perspective that you have to deal with in the elements, especially in the wintertime. Every time anything breaks, Mother Nature, your enemy, is taking great opportunities to ruin the rest of your day and everyone else's around you. She was a very harsh teacher. The lessons were learned and highly valued. I gained a massive skill set. I'm extremely functional in the cold. I'm fine. You drop temperatures, I'll figure it out. I've been in temperatures below minus 103 degrees ambient in the buff. I've done that.
Yeah, you told Rex Bear about this, but it really struck me so you guys went in a sauna that was 200 degrees, got
Yep.
nice and hot, right? Or it was like 214, I think you said.
214 technically, yeah.
214, so you could say that you were experienced 314 degrees difference in temperature, which is pretty cool. So there you are in your sauna, which is 200 degrees, which is pretty hot for a sauna. I do believe they're usually about like they're under 150, I think, right?
I don't even know technically. I don't know what they normally set them to, but we had maybe 8 or 9 people in that run.
Yeah,
and we were all in there. And
yeah,
I had never really done a sauna before, technically, except for repairing them to like turn them on and test them. I've worked on saunas. I never used a sauna before that day. So it seemed hot to me. And I know the setting was 214, but I couldn't tell you what people normally do in there.
Yeah, I think usually it's maybe 160 at max. I think it's usually nothing near 214.
Well, we were going for that whole butterball technique you were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Yeah. So you were gonna so there you are in an extraordinarily hot sauna, which I think is way hotter than usual, which is a bit extreme. And so I guess you guys just waited until you were like, "Let me out! God, it's so hot! It's so hot!"
Oh no! We had radio. We we had on boots, towels, and a radio. I mean, you always had your radio no matter what at South Pole. It was like kind of like you can be screwing around. You always have to have your radio on you. So we were screwing around. We had our radio. We're waiting for the weatherman to announce that the temperature had actually gone down to hit the minus 100 ambient mark. That's all we were waiting for. We were informed of this tradition when we were informed that the temperature was heading in that direction, and that it was pretty much inevitable. Like at such and such time-ish, it's going to drop. So we had fired up the sauna, got ready, everybody was prepped, and we were just waiting for that mercury to drop lower and earn our, accolades.
And so it's 214 in there,
Mhm.
and I get what you spent a couple minutes in there at 200 degrees.
We were
or
probably,
so?
I think we were probably in there about 15 or 20 minutes, to
Okay,
be
so
honest.
that's an extra,
We were roasting. We were
that's an extra,
roasting for sure.
that's an
And then
extraordinary
we
amount of
got
time to be in there. Yeah.
the announcement on the radio, and we just blitzed open the sauna door, which is connected to a coat room, which is connected to the hallway, which is then connected to what we call the beer can, because we are at an elevated position. The beer can is not heated technically. So once you exit that hallway into the beer can, you're in unheated space. Technically, you go down just a deck of stairs to ground level. You breach that exit door, drop that towel, and go find the South Pole and run around it and come back in. And it was, you have no idea how much moisture you can observe shooting out of you. I mean, like as if you had like a spray can and you pull the trigger and you see the stuff come out. Imagine that like happening out of every pore of your body. You're just watching yourself technically shrink, because it's like you're off gassing. So this is your mass. So you're like demassing before your eyes. It was wild. And if you stood still, you couldn't see around yourself at all. You would create a cloud of opaque moisture, and you would be condensing snow about you, and you couldn't see. So you had to keep moving. That was ultimately the plan. Get around the pole and get back in before you freeze your butt off. And it was minus 103.4 at the time that we actually breached. So we were given the announcement, and then it had dropped. And through the activity, they recorded, and they said that during our event, it had actually dropped to 103.4.
Wow. And then, so see that to me is really quite the experience that you're gonna learn a lot about yourself when you do when you do something like that. I mean, I would say that definitely is something that Wim Hof probably could not top. Although I'm sure he would try it, but
I'm
that's
sure he would try it in the blink of an eye, and he would be a champ about it, I bet. If I can do it, Hoff can do it.
yeah, wow. So now that you are, not in an absolutely cold location,
Hmm.
do you still practice any kind of cold immersion?
Yeah, more or less. I don't treat myself like it's cold ever, really. Like just yesterday, I have a dog in the house that I'm taking care of, and I went to go take her for a walk, and I said I'm gonna put some socks on and some shoes on and take the dog for a walk, right? And I go outside, and I have my jeans on, and I have this black jacket with a hood that I wear. I got at Costco. It's like just cheap Costco. I guess technically it's a spring jacket, technically, but I'm in a t-shirt, a spring jacket, and jeans, and just like shoes, and I'm like walking down over by the train tracks in the snow. And I'm thinking to myself, it's a little cold out today, I guess. It's kind of cold. Maybe I should put something warmer on next time I go outside. And I go back home and I check the weather. It's 0 degrees out. And I imagine that to most people that would be like freakishly cold. But when I go outside, I'm just like, it's a little cool. It's a little cold out today, I think maybe.
Wow.
The cold doesn't really bother me that much. I don't have to succumb to it, so to say. I can definitely mental my way through it. I don't know how to put it, but in a way, I feel like if I need to be warmer, I'll just think it or move something. Like if I'm outside doing something, I'm already doing something, so I can just do it faster. I can make my temperature increase, I guess. I don't know what to say. I don't
Oh
get
yeah.
cold very easily. I hate being cold. I'll tell you that much. If I
Yeah.
feel like I have transitioned to now I'm cold, I think most people are angry when they're cold. And I would say that I am too. I'm just very resistant to catching myself in that position.
Oh, I get it. I get it. Well, it reminds me of some of the early, well, not the first, let's just say, documented European citizens to the continent here. When they came across the Native Americans, they were freaked because they'd be in wool and they'd be freezing, and a lot of the Native Americans would be like, they have like a little, maybe like a little leather shirt on, you know, a little pair of pants, and they'd be like, come on now, it isn't that cold. And so it goes to show, see, they had that primal health, basically. Their, you know, the body enjoyed the cold and didn't think it was such a big deal. And so you start thinking, wait a second, if I'm freezing and this guy's in a loincloth and like a leather vest,
Mhm.
there's, I'm the one who's wrong,
People
basically.
can get acclimated for sure. You know,
Yeah.
there was people at the facility that didn't have to go outside that often. So, you know, here it was in the middle of winter. I was more familiar with going outside, but the other people were different because, excuse me, they didn't go out that often. But had they gone out, they would have acclimated as well. Anybody can do this. You know, it's a muscle memory thing. It is just like riding a bike. If you keep riding a bike, you're going to get better at riding a bike. If you keep exposing yourself to the cold, you're going to be better at being exposed to the cold. It's just that simple. I just recommend people do it as often as they can. There's like this, I think Wim Hof and folks talk about taking cold showers in the morning, like just straight up, like you're supposed, like the first thing you do is take a freezing cold shower. It's supposed to be one of the best things for you. And I bet it is awesome technically. I mean, it sucks, but it's probably awesome for you.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I guess it is practice. You can just get in the cold water if you want, but
Mhm.
you can also take a hot shower first, nice and hot. Be like, okay, then let it be too hot for feels good. Just turn it to cold and spend a minute or two just in the cold. And the thing is, once you get cold, once you kind of like get under your arms and you like, and you know, turn around a few times, you just I use the word just surrender to it,
Mhm.
and then it's not cold anymore.
Mhm.
It really isn't. And then and you do you acclimate to it, and then eventually you don't really, when you start feeling the gains that you get from it,
Mhm.
then you don't mind it. Because I think part of it is like the why. Most people say it
Mhm.
just sucks, I don't like it, it's uncomfortable, it's terrible, but they don't have the why. When you realize that will create
Mhm.
like a whole new life, a whole new day, then like you'll never miss it in the morning. You'll always
There's
be
like new
like, yeah,
energy pockets and things that we find by doing
yes.
that, by pushing our bodies to the limits of what we're capable of. We find like these new plateaus of things that we can do, but people don't know without pushing in those directions. I like how you said add the hot water with the cold. That makes perfect sense because it's now you're actually pushing the body to both extremes, which is even better. It makes me think in my head, and I like that you have a mechanical background. I think you're going to get this. Mechanical things suffer worse from lack of use over time than abuse. And I use the example would be like if I was to take my arm and just simply put it behind my back for 10 years and then untie it and try to put it to use, the lack of use has made it, it doesn't do anything anymore. But if for 10 years I took that arm and abused it and worked it harder and harder and always was, I would wind up having this really good arm. So lack of use is worse than abuse. We should be abusing our bodies more than being sedentary. You'd be in better shape.
Oh, absolutely. I always think if you drive a car enough, you don't give it a chance to break down.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. If you sit a car in a driveway for 10 years and you go start it up and take it down the road, good luck.
It's not going to run. And it's the same with your body.
Hmm.
You know, it's funny. I mean, a little like guilty pleasure that I have is I love watching fails videos. You know, like where people do silly things and the fails videos. You know,
Yeah, wipe out.
especially yeah, especially the Russian ones, Russian fails. That's a good evening right there. So
That's
anyway,
because you're a good Cold War raised kid.
yeah, oh, I know. They're so much tougher. Like the things that would, you know, injure an American or like they don't even care. It's just amazing. Like there's one like where they like drive a lot off a bridge into the water and they splash and it starts floating and they're just talking like, oh, I think we fell in the water. Yeah. And it didn't even face them. Tough people.
Yep.
Well, what I notice is why most people like what creates most fails is that people are out of physical condition,
Mhm.
is that they tried to do something that they shouldn't have been doing and they don't know that they are in no shape to be doing that. And so yeah,
Mhm.
you know, it's good to drive that vehicle, don't give it a chance to break down, but also if you're always abusing your body a little bit in a positive way, extremes of temperature, extremes of exertion, you know, then it's not, yeah, because your car is, your body is just like a car sitting in a garage or out front or in a grass field for 10 years. It's not going to start. Many people realize that if you have not exerted yourself in
Mm-hmm.
any way or exercise for 10 years, like,
Mm-hmm.
so, something's going to break. So it's an interesting idea because really people are, well, we know this, but people are breaking from being sedentary,
Mm-hmm.
you
I
know,
believe
just,
the
yeah.
taxation on my system at the South Pole, I think, was phenomenal. Because in addition to the extreme cold temperatures, because we were at high elevation, it's at 9,300 feet of elevation, we also had very limited oxygen supply, which I also think is something that people could put into their practices. Breathing
Oh
matters a
yeah.
lot, and exposing yourself to function. Oh, geez, I'm probably like, this is probably like, I am not. Check with your doctor before you listen to a single word that I say, folks.
Yeah, we are not life
This is
coaches or
this is this
doctors.
is my experience that I'm discussing, and
Entertainment
my
purposes only.
this is my plumbing expertise in regards to your health. The idea of breathing through a straw and limiting your ability to intake air and exhaust. And if anybody can figure out a way, besides a dopey mask, because that's not actually enough in this circumstance, but to actually really limit your airflow and become functional, be careful. I had to do this myself because I was forced to in an environment where I had medical staff to back me up if I went down in my daily work. So be forewarned. But with that being said, I reaped the benefits of said taxation on my body. Um, it was very hard to do things there. You would have to do things slower. You would run out of breath faster when you first showed up at pole, but you could also acclimate to that as well. And we were told by the staff surgeon that our oxygen levels, if we were to be tested, check our actual oxygen levels in our blood, that they would be so low. I think he said they were under 80%, and that would qualify us technically. He's like, if you guys were back in the US, he's like, you guys would qualify to be on oxygen 24 hours a day with numbers like this. Like they would just give it to you, you know? I was like, wow, I just get work. I get more job tickets. I
Oh,
get told
that's
to hurry up.
amazing. Well, that's like Wim Hof talks about breathing, you know, and
Mhm.
it's where you do the in and out, like deep breath in and just relax, let it out. And you
Mhm.
do that fairly quickly for 30 or 40 reps. And then you would breathe all the way out, hold it, you know, for as long as you can. Usually a average between like a minute in 30 seconds. You can time it or you can just go as long as you can, then breathe in all the way, hold it for 15 minutes. And especially when you breathe out, but it's, and you hold it, but especially even more so when you breathe in and hold it, you like would never have a thought of needing, let's say, well, drugs, right? Like you need nothing to excite your consciousness or have an amazing experience, because it's like when you do that exercise, all of a sudden your body's tingling, you're very, very alive. You're just like, your consciousness can just kind of explode. And when I started that practice, which I try to do daily, but it doesn't always happen, not quite that disciplined, but I'm working on it, um, is you realize that you don't breathe. Like really, we don't breathe. We hunch forward, we crush our lungs. Then when you start breathe, it's funny, but the life, so it's great. Yeah, these life-changing experiences of deepening your breath, and you know that cold experience. It's funny. So something that you went through earlier is now something that a lot of people are becoming aware of, and they're doing it, you know, in a different way, but they're jumping in cold water, taking cold showers, going to like the Russian banya where you get in the sauna, then you jump in the super cold water, and they're
Mhm.
actually breathing. So it's like you were kind of an early pioneer, just a very brutal practice.
It is, yeah. And see, the funny thing is too, is it's funny because it's like I didn't expect that. It's like it's almost like it's a military term, like being mandatorily volunteered, you know. So I got like mandatorily volunteered to be exposed to those temperatures. But now that we're discussing this and the breathing as well, this goes again full circle to where I'm trying to decipher my experiences, because I also get the idea of holding your breath for a long time, because when I was in the submarine school, we had what they called stinky hood training. So we had to be taught how to egress a sunken submarine. They don't do it with an air supply. So in that practice, I went 4.5 minutes underwater without air. I know what can be done. It's a wild experience. My brain went all over the place, but effectively, yeah, you get through it, and the exercise was over, and you learn stuff like, when someone removes your choice to breathe entirely and says, now function, you realize you can, because what else are you going to do? You just learn.
Wow, that is something I've never held my breath that long. But see, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
Your mind goes crazy. Your instincts go crazy. Like, oh my God, you're trying to kill us. But you're sort of like subduing that panic body,
Mhm.
that panic notion.
Yep.
You're really showing the body and the mind who's in control, and it's neither
Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah.
It was the Navy at that point.
It was the Navy, yeah. So that training was partly spiritual and and partly.
That was really spiritual. Actually, that's probably one of the more spiritual experiences that I've ever had, because it was one of only, I would say, a couple near death experiences. And that one, I mean, I really thought that I had crossed the line for so long that I couldn't consider that I was going back. Like, I had not breathed for so long, and I knew it. And you're just caught in a tunnel that's full of water, and you're trying to egress, and you're just like, well, I guess I'll just keep trying. I can't imagine that I'm not going to be blacked out in another 4 seconds. And then 4 seconds later, you're like, I'm still not blacked out. So you
Oh
just
my
keep
God,
going. And
that's
then, yeah, I remember
amazing.
at the tail end, I got out of the tunnel, and I remember at that point, I was fading at the end of this drill. I was going down. It was, and I remember floating up from the bottom of the pool. And as I was getting nearer the surface, I could hear the Navy SEALs in the water up top screaming to open the valve. There's a butterfly valve on the mask that when you surface, you open that and air comes back in, because you're just cut off. You have this buoyancy thing and this thing, and you get up, and the idea is you open the valve on the surface and you have air again. And I just remember being like limp, like just floating up. You're positively buoyant. I remember just like hearing them screaming that muteness through the water. Open the valve, and I pop through the top, and it gets louder. Open the freaking, and I popped that thing open, and I just remember I could still hear that moment, like the. It was the best air I ever had in my life. I remember that a lot.
Oh, that's amazing. But to have that experience where you can look at one moment and say that was the best air I've ever had. I love it. And it probably wasn't. It probably wasn't the finest air either.
No, not necessarily, but yeah. But I remember being really happy that I was coming like back into myself, because I was breaking off at that moment. I hadn't breathed in a long time.
Well, most people haven't had multiple near-death experiences. That's interesting. But I'd ask solitude. When you were in the Arctic, was solitude something that you experienced? Because I think that many people they they think to themselves, you know what? If we had an EMP, or if we had, like, uh, they'd be fine with suddenly there being silence. I mean, many people like to hike, etc. And it just seems that we have this natural inclination, even if people don't feel it on the surface, for that deep solitude. I think many people would admit that, man, just spending a week stuck in an igloo, if they didn't freeze, would just be blissful. It's something
Mm.
that we're lacking is solitude.
I think people do need more of that, and to experience just the tasking of overcoming things in these types of environments that are challenging, and to do things on your own. I mean, this is it's very much missing in society. People have conveniences laid at their feet all day long, and they should learn how to survive through a little suffering, technically.
Oh yeah, it always gets me when I see. Okay, now I'm going to be a little bit playfully judgmental here of people, so I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but
Targeted at me, I'll take it.
but I
Accuse me
am,
of it.
yeah, but I am mechanically inclined. Okay, so all right. One thing that gets me, like, along with what you're saying, is when you see a perfectly healthy grown man with no like prosthetics or anything, all his body is there and he is functional, and AAA is changing his tire. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like,
Mhm.
man, the world's changed. This is not good. Come on, man. you
I
know,
can't tell you how many times I've had to help a friend change the battery in their car,
yes,
and you're like,
yes.
really, man? I mean, I'm I'm happy to help you.
Exactly. I know.
And they're like,
But
yeah, man, thanks for helping me. This would have taken me all weekend. Like, bro, just don't tell people that, okay? Don't say that to people. Don't say it would take you all weekend to change your car battery. Don't do that.
yeah, you gotta come up with like some kind of a cover story. Like, I can't bend over. I threw my back out. Could you do that for me? Or
Yeah. Like, yeah, certain things you just like, you know, I'm going to show you how to do this, but I want to see you do it next time. Like, after I show you how to do this, you need to know how to do this because this isn't hard.
exactly. Yeah. Well, um, you mentioned, I forget where I heard you mention it. It was either on recently, just recently, you were talking to people about astral projection, I think was the focus
Yes,
of
out of
what you guys
body
do.
stuff. I was
Yeah.
talking on with Akvil Sava and Rich West, who I recommend to people highly. They're versed on the topics and trying to help folks that are confused. So check them out.
And so and I'll link to that interview in the show notes for this. So are you an astral travel practitioner, or is it just something that is spontaneously happened? And also, I got to ask, so you've had multiple near-death experiences. Most people are lucky to have one, or maybe luck isn't the right word for it, but most people only have one if they have one at all.
I'm thinking of a second one immediately right off the top of my head. So I'm going to go with yes, I've had multiple because I can think of a second one right now. And I could probably, if I continue thinking, this is what frustrates me with my memories is that I have like this massive amount of stuff that I don't necessarily recall right off the top of my head. So I might have some other near death experience or two that I remember tomorrow. You know, it's just, it is what it is. But there was another part to that question that you had as well. It was near death experiences and something else. Oh, the out of
Oh,
body
and
stuff.
yeah,
So the out
astral
of body
projection.
stuff, I am intrigued about because I study. I follow all sciences, all religions. I love knowledge. You can't get me enough of it. But I also love finding out new ways of looking at things. And I am not an adherent to traditional mindsets that we've been presented. I am way beyond that. I've done enough reading and researching. I am at a much higher level of where reality is at. If people want to join me there, so be it. If they want to bicker and talk about traditional ways, good luck. Enjoy that stuff. You know, you can go as far back as people are now bickering about the earth being round or flat all over again. I'm not doing that. I'm way above all of that stuff. So I'm more into consciousness and things like that, and how theoretically my consciousness could be here and somewhere else at the same time. Those are the conversations that I want to have because there's people that put up grand debates for the possibility of it. And I would just say that in my own direct firsthand experience, I shouldn't say witness, I experienced these things that people are talking about now all the time as a kid. Not so much now, here and there now. Um, but I find that what they're talking about now answers the questions that I harbored as a child better than the answers I was given by adults at the time. And yeah, I was paying that much attention. I wanted to know stuff, and I asked questions when I was a kid, and now I'm finding out that the adults that I asked were wrong. So yeah, I'm mad.
Yes.
I'm just straight up. I'm mad as an intellect that was inquiring and was fed BS my whole life because right, wrong, good, bad, ugly doesn't really. I don't care if it was bad intention, just nescience, ignorance. It doesn't matter. I got a bunch of bad intel growing up. I just want good intel.
No, I like that.
And
And
that's
so
the
you,
out of body stuff for me now is I'm very intrigued by the possibility. So I want to
yeah.
study the sciences. I want to contact people that are doing it, and just more or less get back to where I was at before someone apparently convinced me what I was doing was nothing but dreaming.
Oh yeah, because we definitely had those magical experiences as kids, and something was a little bit, a little bit different about many, I would say, of us or something when you were a kid. Because
Mhm.
like for me, I remember seeing, I could see people who were in the astral around us in the physical. you know I didn't know what it was, and so
Mhm.
I was like scared, like, what the crap is that? Now I realized it was no big deal, it was cool, but at the
Mhm.
time
Mhm.
I didn't get it, and there's no one I could ask.
Mhm.
So I was just scared, I didn't say anything. I could see, I used to call them etherical ghouls, like these little ghouls, like basically just negative little entities that latch onto people's etheric body. I could see them bouncing around,
Mhm.
and they kind of were, they're sort of self-explanatory. I didn't like them, um, but I even had experiences as a little kid of levitating.
Oh,
you know like
uh-huh,
just for brief moments I could,
uh-huh.
because the thing was, I didn't know you couldn't. It just seemed like you could make yourself light and float,
Mm-mm.
but let your parents see you do that, and they're gonna they'll scare that right out of you. Stop
Yeah.
that. And then you never do it again. So yeah, it's getting back to that place where you showed up.
Mhm. Yeah, that's kind of where my mindset is to get rid of the barriers and obstacles that other people's thoughts got implanted into my head. I oftentimes challenge folks. Um, I have a bunch of I don't know, theoreticals that I throw at people, or oh geez, I lost my train of thought. What were we just saying?
Oh yeah. So you are definitely studying astral projection. You haven't really been a conscious practitioner of it yet, but it's sort of at least
No.
understanding it's a goal.
Mhm. Darn it,
And
I totally lost my
and
train of thought. What
and
was it
then
that you were just saying?
also near-death experiences. You've had a second one that you can think of. But yeah, as a kid, I had lots of experiences too that were, I feel like I'm returning to, or maybe I'm really returning to a more advanced version of it as I get back to it. You sort of, um, but also there's the aspect of why you don't fall for things. Is to me, it's something. It's kind of a little bit different of a topic, but along the same lines is that, um, we often ponder why we didn't fall for everything forever. Like,
Mm,
you would say most people, there's this a reference for Ralph Steiner again. He had these 7-year cycles that we go through in our progression, in our growth, and he links them to planets and this and that. It's wild. It's like where you're developing for way longer than you think.
mhm.
um, and so he would say that many people get stuck around like 21 or 23 years old. Their consciousness just gets hard coded, and they're that age the rest of their experience because they're not consciously advancing. But to me, it seems like many people like yourself, I would humbly say like myself and like many that I know, um, you didn't fall for the narrative. Something broke you out of it. Like there was something almost pulling you from the future. Maybe it was yourself.
I have a feeling of that sometimes.
Yes, yeah. Do you have that feeling like you, like what kept, like, I'm not that bright. I'd have fallen for dumb crap many times over, but for one reason or the other, even if it wasn't conscious, I've even tried to fall for stupid things. you know.
There's and I don't expect you to know everything about me. So I'm going to just throw out some of the stuff that I've talked about in the past and throw some things there. So the remote viewing stuff that I was exposed to as a child. One of the things that I believe occurred was that they take the children and they have them remote view themselves in the future, which there's pros and cons to everything in life. But I would put on the pros list that it would give me when I go now, like, so let's say I'm a child and I get to remote view aspects of my future. So I get packages of info from myself in the future that I get to now have as a child, technically. So now moving forwards from that point, I think that explains a lot of the peculiar times in my life where, let's just say I just met you. Let's say you're my auto mechanic and I'm going, hey, Craig, I got to bring my car in for blah, blah, blah. And you give me a whole bunch of spiel. And I just instantaneously, I don't know why, but I know you're full of crap. And I'm right. And there are times in my life where I know how right I am, but I've never been so right. And I would suggest that certain circumstances like that can increase the amount of my rightness. That it's not always associated to that, but that would at times explain times in my life where I absolutely know that I'm 100% right about something. And I absolutely know that I have no idea why.
Oh, I get it. And I find that you can go back to yourself, of course, in the past from now. You can just, oftentimes I can look back at my life things maybe that where I have a hang up on something, or
Mm-hmm.
difficult experiences or good experiences, and
Yep.
I can just become centered, and I can connect to myself, and I can be there, and I can say, so I've gone back. I believe that I've changed my timeline, changed my now. It's weird. You can sort of feel it, but you go, I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to go back to where I was having a hard time. And I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to tell myself that everything works out just fine. I'm going to kind of help my younger self out. And you go back and you do that. But then at that moment, now you've changed your existence. Now things have changed. But it's
Change
kind of,
everything from that point forwards, and that is
yeah,
technically effective um, time modification through intention, which is taught in the CIA remote viewing stuff. You can apply intention over time and get outcomes that are desirable.
I didn't know
And
that. Wow, I didn't know that,
you
that it was
just
formal.
explained the process, and I'll go a little bit further
Yeah,
with
do
it. I
so.
think I
Yeah.
can add a little bit more detail to it, right? And this is a practice everybody should do as well, because you're taxing your system in another way. It's your spirit, and your state of mind can be taxed and changed by this exercise. Okay, so imagine, if you will, you go back into your past to any point in time where you made a decision, and you just simply brood on that decision, and you consider if it was a good decision or not. And you have to honestly answer this yourself, right? If it turns out that the decision was poor, then you need to learn from that. But if you're not going to brood and you're not going to look backwards, right, you won't know. But when you do this activity, you now have to, this takes time, folks. This is hard. This is shadow work. This is tough stuff, but it'll make you better. So now when you look at this decision that you made that was a piss poor decision, and you honestly say, I shouldn't have done that, now you have to look at all the things that went wrong because of it. All of the other positions that you had afterwards where that poor decision negatively impacted you again. And you have to technically correct all of those positions. So you can effectively rewrite your life from that point forwards for the better. But you literally have to do it. It's just that simple. You have to consider yourself, you have to consider your past, and you have to consider where you made mistakes and how that impeded your proper path of performance moving forwards. Because you effectively are where you at right now because of all of your wrong decisions in life. If you're not going to make the corrections, you'll be right where you are always.
Wow, that's something.
And
Yeah.
no one can do this work for you, and no one can answer these questions for you. This is very self-introspective.
Yeah.
Do you think all decisions you made before today were perfect? Because if so, you don't have to look backward. Your life will be perfect from this point forwards.
Yeah, and and if the past and the future were static, it seems like this moment would be dead.
Yeah.
So it's like, so it really isn't static, and that's a tough one. Well, one of the things you're talking about, the way your memory works,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds to me like linearly decentralized consciousness, where we loosen up from just being this one, and you start to, I guess it's just the awareness of yourself in different timelines, the awareness of yourself in different moments in time, which are all ultimately the same moment, really.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we're all kind of hanging out together, and it's this evolutionary process, but it's happening in the future now and in the past on top of each other. Like, I think of a processor, a computer processor. If it's like 8 cores, that's 8 CPUs. And so your consciousness is just has the appearance of one individual, but it's because it's one individual stacked,
Mm-hmm.
through many instances of itself. So yeah, when you begin to have that consciousness, like I think you're speaking of it, it can be something to get used to when you start experiencing that. Like, things, but you don't know why, or you're feeling like here's one. Have you ever been in a particularly good or a bad mood, and you realize this has nothing to do with me today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like you feel like it's just some other energy, like wrapped around you.
Yeah.
But to see, like it's like you're caught in a current. You're caught in a negative current. So to say, you're not feeling negative, but you feel like you're moving in a negative direction regardless. It happens.
Yeah.
I threw this.
Yes, this is cool. Yeah.
So this is based off of the Itzhak Bentov wrote a book called Stalking the Wild Pendulum, where he discusses what you're talking about as an expansion of timelines. So you see in the middle there's a black line, and that would be like your normal progression moving from the left to the right. And that would be the idea of time in a first-hand experienced position. The triangles moving up and down would be what Bentov would say would be like when folks talk about a 20 and back, where you get busted out of your normal timeline, redirected somewhere else, and then brought back almost instantaneously. Those breaks are just exaggerated for folks to see the breaks, but they're almost should just be reconnected where the triangle comes back. And then you will also see the orange line and the green line, which I added as a positive and negative energy forces. The positive ripping through a cycle of 5-year frequency, and the negative being on a 10-year frequency. And you can see from 74 to 34 up there is the timeline. And this one is based off myself and my own personal experiences and dates that are pertinent to me in history for me to figure out where my consciousness has been going for these 20 and back circumstances. And I'm just trying to work with other folks that look at things like this and understand that that line in the middle is not necessarily all there is that's going on.
Absolutely. And that book was called Stalking the Wild Pyramid. Is that it?
It's called Stalking the Wild Pendulum.
Pendulum. Okay.
Yep. Technically, it's called Stalking the Wild Pendulum on the Mechanics of Consciousness.
Wow. You know,
And
I
the
like
author
it.
is,
So,
it's Itzhak Bentov. He was previously in the Mossad, and his book, that book, and all of the information in it was what the CIA used as their format for understanding of consciousness when they were operating the Stargate program. It's in their paperwork.
wow. And the Stargate what would be a very high level view of the Stargate program?
No
What were
problem.
they
The
doing?
high level view was that it was they were trying to understand the powers. I shouldn't even say they were trying to use. They didn't care about understanding the powers of the mind in the cosmos for the purposes of espionage. That's it. They didn't care. Oh, we can access the Akashic records. Cool. What do they tell us? That's all. They weren't impressed by the fact that we can access the Akashic records. They weren't impressed by the fact that we can look forwards and backwards in time and space, this is all provable in the documents that I'll be presenting to folks. They just wanted to use it, just like it would be like, you hand the military a gun. They don't start getting into the whys and the philosophies. They just see it as a tool that they want more of, and how do they use it best against their enemies. So when they became privy to these weapons of the mind, as far as they were concerned, they wanted to make sure they were in control of them. So they started programs to start going through society and seeing who had the skill set, which it turned out it's everyone. And then they wanted to figure out how to just enhance it. Anyone can remote view. Anybody can do these things just as much as anyone can play a guitar. If you want to play a guitar, there's no one stopping you. You just have to practice. Same thing with remote viewing, folks, and acquiring access to the Akashic records. Simply practice makes perfect. Don't let people convince you that you can't.
Oh yeah, definitely. And astral projection along the same lines where
all of it.
Yeah, like I've never, only a time or two deliberately done it, but where it all stemmed from was when I was a youngster and meditating on it. I found a book or two on it. Never quite never had total conscious control over it, but there was a time or two when I forgot I was working at it, and then I popped out of the body, realized I was out of the body, which tends to pop you back in the body.
Mhm.
And I didn't pursue it. I never. It's something that I'm working on now again, but I stopped pursuing that skill. But just through chance, being able to hop out of the body, I think if you do it once, then this is real because you've done it. And well, along with like talking to your past and then fixing your past timeline, like where you made a mistake, then you go through and you correct that, you talk to yourself, and then you correct the mistakes that happened, the path that you were on from that. I've often felt that I can ask my future too. I can say, hey, what, hey, future me, what? And the thing is, we are connected to that through basically emotion. Like what's correct feels good, feels exciting, what is not. That's funny. We have that emotional connection to that future self, really to our previous self moments too, just when we begin to follow our excitement, which is like, what a compass, what feels good, well, do that.
I'm happy to hear you say that, the term emotion. I think people get a bit crazed with that nowadays, that, you know, people say emotion or emote, or feelings. But that's our core, you know, that's truly my truth detector. You know, if I'm communicating with someone and whether they're coming across poorly or the information, it's truly my feelings that matter at that point. And I respect myself enough to function that way. You know, if
Yeah.
somebody's saying something to me and they're throwing every fact theoretically at me in the world, if it doesn't ring true with me, it's not true. I'm gonna very much trust myself. And that's saved my ass a million times over. As I really learned that a lot of people will say a lot of stuff about things, but I had better just do what I think is best. I wouldn't be here right now if I was functioning a different way.
Well, that's the thing. We have that. It's a physical instinct, but also it's a spiritual awareness, the consciousness awareness, and it always gets me where people will. You can read a person instantly, you know, and it always gets me like. I'll oftentimes get sent, like snippets of video or memes or stuff like that, and people will say, hey, did you hear what so and so said, watch this video, and I'm like, no, I don't want to see it
Mhm,
because I can feel it and it
mhm.
doesn't feel good. I'm not even going to look at it.
Totally get that.
People share these wretched things and go, look at this, can you believe
Mhm.
that? I'm like, I don't even want to know
Yeah,
you
why
know
would you want to look at that? Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Tech Technically, there are very intelligent folks that I agree with that say those activities are coordinated at higher levels by people that understand exclusively the trauma that they're manufacturing in the world, that it's under false pretenses. That the reality is those images being witnessed by people is technically causing trauma for every set of eyes that it hits. And that's their intention.
I could see it. Yeah, it makes absolute sense.
And they're disingenuous when they say things like, oh, and I'm not accusing every single person that this is crossing their paths on with some meme or something. I'm just saying the person that got the ball rolling had bad intentions.
I get it. It's funny when you look at a lot of memes or the video clips and such. You think to yourself, "Wow, I mean, this ultimately took some time to produce. Somebody had to make this." And so you
Yep.
start wondering, like, "Wow, who would have had time to do all this Photoshop work?" It's true. It's true. Well, maybe a room full of people in a building you don't know about who work on it, 9 to 5 every day.
There's a guy that speaks in the circuit. His name is Mark Passio, and
Yes.
he calls himself like a recovering Satanist in some capacity. I'm sure I'm getting the terminology wrong, but he used to be a highfalutin Satanist, and he's not anymore. But what he tries to warn people about is he's like, you really need to understand how organized and active your enemy is. Like the Satanists are not lazy. They're not like without things to do. Like they're the like technically it would make sense that, if there's a horrible meme out there that you don't want to see, to suggest that it was made by a Satanist for fun just because he wants to produce it and put more horror out in the world, their agenda supports that activity has value to them. So they do it. And it's not a matter of whether you believe they get a functional value out of it. You just have to understand that they believe they do.
Yeah, and I have not met many lazy evil people. They're
They're usually they're pretty up to their ears in evil activities. Like bad people are
they're
motivated people technically.
they're usually emphatic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, woof, if you put that much energy towards something good, but that's not technically possible for you. So, carry on.
I think I've said that of almost every criminal that I have ever met. It was like, man, if you put half as much effort into doing something good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also, so you have your Satanists, you have your dark magicians, one could call them,
Mhm.
also, who are creating these things. But see, also, I think there's, you know, oftentimes referred to it as a signal, an energy. They're putting out this psychic energy where people are doing their work for them quite a lot, because really, um, uh, it kind of just speaks for itself. So I mean, a lot of those memes that we might see are they're created by people who are on a very real level possessed. That's something that I think, I mean, it's quite the topic, but that I'm seeing right now is that there is a new age happening. I think we're going through. I'm referencing Steiner a lot lately because I've just been reading a lot of his stuff. But
It
as
happens.
he talks about, there's been like, I think we're on like the fifth or sixth Earth ultimately. So Earth has an evolutionary experience, and then it manifests as a new Earth, basically, and that's his cosmology. And so when you're beginning to change ages, when there's about to be a new Earth, then ultimately you're like in an astrological transit. And so in a sense, like right now, it does seem that to me, when I look at the Earth, when I look at people right now, good and evil is becoming very, very defined. Now, I know some people would say that there's no such thing, and I get it at a high level, that's true, but on a physical human level, that it does exist, I think, at least as far as pain and pleasure, however a person wants to look at it. But it does seem that we are the Earth, consciousness here is kind of splitting, because how many people do you know who say, wow, in the last like couple years, half my family is gone, or like I've lost half my friends, whatever. It just seems that there's a polarization, but it's not what people think. It's a polarization of it. It feels like just consciousness. People who have this self-awareness, and then people who have kind of a diluted self-awareness. It just seems that humanity is divorcing itself or something like that. There's just, do you feel that there's strong evolutionary directions going on right now?
I feel there's a lot of energy being applied technically. I don't know that I would use the word evolutionary, because to me that presupposes a positive growth. I'm not convinced that that's where we're at right now. With what I'm seeing is not positive technically. I see us losing right now technically. That may spark a greater growth of good in the future, but I don't see that time being now. You had said that you feel that folks, that there's, you said there's a greater understanding of good and evil, and I would disagree with that, and I think people are more confused on the topics. Unfortunately, right now, people seem very confused as to what's good and what's evil to me, and that's frustrating, because I think it's also causing a lot of the apathy for where we're at, which is allowing the organized, active, bad people to be very successful at the moment.
That's absolutely true. And it does seem that, at least to me, good and evil have never been more apparent. But as you're saying, people are
The
more
existence of the
confused.
conflict of the two, I think everyone sees right now. I think that
Yes.
everybody can see that there's certainly a conflict going on,
Yes.
but I'll still go back to, I think they're confused still as to who's good and who's evil and what's going
Exactly.
on in the conflict.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of what you're saying. There's lots of energies being applied, and that's true. So you
Mhm.
definitely have your,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
that's one of the biggest issues right now. Is a lot of people think that there's two sides in this. And
Yes.
that's the biggest sham. That's why I don't get in conversations with people that are two sided. It's way more complex than that. The amount of factions involved is off the wall. This is, we have
I like that. Yeah, it's
many,
true.
many, many hands in the till, and people want to argue about two of them. It's just ridiculous. That's not going to solve the problem.
Yeah, and if I look at that, not even on a spiritual, like taking it from not even a consciousness level,
Mm-hmm.
just taking it from a very mundane level, a physical level,
Mm-hmm.
people refer to the deep state, and I would say, well, you got to realize that there isn't just one. As in,
Yeah. Right.
there's pieces. It didn't, also it wasn't created at one time. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got like this layers of the deep state and these layers that were created at different
Yep.
times in history, and some work together, some are at war. There's deep state. So it's kind of like when people say the deep state, where that's like, well, you know,
Yeah.
that's a very nebulous and big topic right
And
there.
it's a sham warning too. A lot of people see there's so many levels here, right? Imagine
Yes.
you're in a war zone, right? You're about to exit. You're in a really hot area. You're about to exit the building, and one of the guys in the room goes, "Hey, watch out! There's a sniper out there." And you go, "Thanks, man." And you walk out the door. But what if it turns out there's 80 snipers out there, and he knew it? If he's only warning you about one, is he on your side?
Yeah, it's true.
So that's what we got going on right now is we have someone who's trying to act like our friend.
Mm.
And they're like, hey, let me give you a warning about what's the matter. Really? That's all that's the matter? I think your perspective might be a little bit limited or you're misinforming me. I think there's more going on. I think the problem's bigger.
No, that definitely is absolutely correct. I like that. I like that. No, it's good. It's good. It helps me see even bigger because it's very true. We live in a world where there's it's dualistic and there's narratives everywhere and there's traps everywhere. So it's very easy to read to think too poignant. Yeah, because there's always the idea of, hey, look, like these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, and you realize no, you need to take a step back
Mm-hmm.
and go deeper. Yeah, for real. Well, you mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza,
Yeah.
you know, and
Oh,
Dr. Joe. Yeah, because I could go on with that previous topic forever, but that's deep, and I love it. Like right there, I'll leave that one where we left it because that's
yeah.
like we we could spend like a whole show just
Totally.
diving deep into that. That's
Totally.
maybe we
Yeah.
will sometime. Like
Yeah,
how
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
how deeper does deep go? You know, because it's
Yeah, how
good. I
many
mean,
different factions can you throw into the mix? Yeah, all of these things, and this is why these types of conversations need to happen more and more, because there are people that are trying to reduce these amount of interactions. So I'm showing up to the plate to just again throw my experiences into the mix, find out what Craig's got going on. I've been saying to folks lately, like 80% of my life and 80% of your life are probably damn similar, but 20% of your life is going to be weird to me, and 20% of my life is weird to you. I want to engage people where we just mostly just talk about our 20%, right? Like I get that you have what I'm going to, no disrespect or discounting. Your boring 80% of your life is not as engaging to me in a conversation. I want to know about your weird stuff, your 20%. That's the more fun conversation. And I think as a society, if we take our 20% out of the shadows and just sit down and communicate them, we're going to have a lot of fun and we're actually figure out a lot of stuff too.
yeah, we want to communicate from where we are outliers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's like everybody washes clothes and poops, you know, right?
Right.
So you
Yep.
can just kind of discount that. You know,
Yep.
yeah, it's where are you an outlier? Where are you not the
Mm-hmm.
generic experience, which is beautiful, but it is exactly that. You know, it's maybe you're zen when you're washing clothes, maybe you're not, but it's still washing clothes. Is washing clothes. You know.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Well, yeah. Well, you mentioned Dr. Joe. I wanted to, because I really like Dr. Joe. You know, I mean, he's been around for a while, ever since like what the bleep, and he was around before then. You know, and I have seen him go through an evolutionary experience since I've been aware of him too.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that has really been speaking to me lately, and I was just kind of thought it was cool that you mentioned him, was how he has his meditations. He has like 10 different meditations you can download, you know, and you can listen, and they're very guided and they're very beautiful, you know, and depending on what mood I'm in, I'm oftentimes up very early in the morning. And so I think I want this one today. And I find that the guided meditation like that, even though at times maybe I check out and ignore it, still it's this measured thing. It's like this one is 47 minutes and I will be in meditation for 47 minutes, you know, and I'll probably be, you know, playing along with the game that he's talking about. And they're very powerful, they're very poignant. Some are like connect to your heart now, feel the energy, then become nothing,
Mm-hmm.
then what is your intent, and then feel that as it exists, and then be nothing again, and then come back to reality. You know, these beautiful manifestational videos and meditations. I think it's very important right now that people be able to manipulate and create their environment for, well, I'll just say, of course, good purposes, maybe just self-serving purposes. But it seems that a natural talent we have is to manifest the path before us. You know, many of us, like, we're not just jellyfish in the ocean at bay to whichever way the tide goes, which is fine. We really are very deliberate creative beings, you know, and it seems that one of the things that he's doing with his meditations and his books are helping people remember that and I'll say evolve in that way or get better at that skill. Because to me, it just seems like without that ability realized and without honing and perfecting that more and more as you go along, you're just kind of lost in life because you everything that happens to you is sort of by chance without that powerful intention creating and blazing a path. And to me, like, really a huge aspect of our evolutionary experience personally is that creative ability. Because if you can't create your mission, if you can't create your bliss, if you can't create your soul's purpose, then well, you don't live it, you know. So he's teaching something very fundamental that's very
Absolutely.
powerful,
And it's wholly true. And
mhm.
I'm not gonna, I can't, this is funny. I can't say that it's true because of my own skills, but I can say that I've observed them. My girlfriend is a master manifester. And I've been watching her for years, and she thinks of something that she needs in life, and I swear it just happens. To the extent I made her start taking notes, like to write down every time it happens, because I was pointing it out to her and she was like, "Oh, you're so," I'm like, "Listen, you need to start keeping track." Okay. She literally went on a bicycle trip by herself in South America, was on the Pan American Highway, like literally in the middle of nowhere. Okay. This is one of the times she manifested, one that was on her list. Middle of nowhere, realizes, you know what? When I get to the next town, I'm going to need a new memory card. So I'm going to have to make a note. And when I get there, I'm going to have to try to learn how to find a memory card speaking Spanish. And she's thinking about this, right? The next day, she's riding down the road and she looks on the side of the road. There's the exact type of memory card that she needs for her electronics. And it also has tons of music on it too. So she just picks it right up and goes, "Oh, I guess that's the memory card I needed." Writes it down on her list and tells me, "Oh, I found it. Remember I said I needed a memory card? Well, I got a memory card, but I didn't have to buy the memory card. It just showed up."
It's perfect, you know. And here's one that I have noticed. I'm just going to call it, you know, tuned in, tapped in, spiritual
Mhm.
couples. I have noticed that it is often the woman who's the manifester.
Of
I mean, I really
course you
have
had to
noticed
say that.
that that's the case.
That sounds
It isn't like the guy's a brick or anything. We come around in time, but it really is the woman seems to be the manifester. It just seems like that's the feminine role, you know.
I can
Um,
follow that, and I'm not gonna snub her in that department. She is certainly the master manifester.
Yeah, us guys are just in charge of, like, you know, bringing home an elk on our shoulder every week in the romance. That's what we do, you
There
know.
you go.
But
But you know what? It's funny too, because even in my life and my career, right? For the most part, my mechanical skills were put to the task of repairing. So I would always say, like, I've never felt like I was creative. That I don't make things, but I can fix anything. You know, if it already exists and it busts and now it's dysfunctional, oh, I'll get you back to functioning. I'll figure that out. I don't care what your system is. I don't care if, I mean, I'm not an auto mechanic by design, but you know what? If it breaks, we're going to figure something. It'll get running again. We're going to do something.
oh yeah, especially if it's honorable and just breaks and stays broken. It's the intermittent problems that are always the
Ooh,
hard ones to
you know
fix,
that.
you know.
You know that.
Yeah. Well, something about when it comes to manifestation that Dr. Joe has been helping me with the meditations, and this might be good for everybody, really, is and I'll send you a link to the one that is like my favorite right now.
Ah, you read my mind. I was thinking that before. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to my favorite
I think
one.
I might have manifested it. I have to write that down.
Exactly. So you manifested it, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so when you do the meditation, you sit there and you become nobody, you focus on the heart, you do this little process, which is very fun, you know? He has a little bit of cool music sound. It's pretty neat. You can cruise into it. what I find now is the blocks that are there come up. And that's like one of the huge values, because you know what you want, you know what you're manifesting, but then in that consistent meditation that you're doing every day or a couple times a week, whatever, um, you'll feel, oh my God, oh, it's that. Oh, these like demons will come out. You feel like, oh God, I have them here in my solar plexus. Or you have them here. You'll feel, oh, this is what it is. Oh God, there's this bad feeling. And you can sort of exorcise them. You can go, oh, I see you. And now you're done.
I like the sounds of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's been great talking to you. I don't want to keep it too long. I mean, it's been
Oh, no worries.
so.
It has been an excellent conversation, Craig. I do really appreciate you having me on. But technically, I have a guy waiting in the batter's box today that just wants to have a conversation and chat and get some help. So I'm actually really looking forward to talking to him, because it's someone that I've been working through the emails, and we haven't been able to connect and line up. And he has a great story, and I do want to chat with him. So I'm very happy that we were able to connect as well. And I do hope that we can have more conversations. I think this was a great start, and I am always looking to engage people that are just looking to have open-minded conversations on different topics and experiences. And I didn't even really get to hear too much about your 20% today, but I'm sure that there's more to be from your life experience as well, and we can maybe figure things out.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it. We'll definitely, maybe next time we'll take on, going beyond the polarity of the, uh, deep state clown party. You know,
Oh, fair enough. Yeah,
yeah.
I have a lot to say about that.
I think
Yeah.
that'll be a great one. Okay, so next time, well, this is radiantcreators.com. Check it out. You'll find this here. You're probably listening to it, so go there. And people can find you on YouTube at Deciphering My Experience in general, is where most of your stuff is.
That is correct. And I'm technically on MeWe by the same title right now. And pay attention, because I do have a pretty cool website that's just around the corner. I'm building it with some folks right now that are doing due diligence. It's just we're getting it constructed. It's going to be a blast.
All right. Until next time, take care. Keep deciphering that experience.
Thanks, folks.